Governor Pritzker, for the first time, calling for the removal of President Trump from office.
This on the same day the president said dangerous cities like Chicago should be used as training grounds for the military. Political reporter Chris Tye here now with all that and new details on the 100 military troops the president wants to send to Illinois. Chris?
Joe and Erica, even for two politicians that are political enemies and who spar regularly, this day stands out from the rest. You'll hear what they said here in a second. As for what troops are headed here, the likeliest will be from the Illinois National Guard, which insiders say Governor Pritzker has control over.
The showdown in Washington, the articles of impeachment against President Trump go to the full House with a vote expected this week. David Wright updates us from the White House. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning, Eva. Get ready for big drama wrapped up in lots of parliamentary procedure as the House of Representatives takes up the impeachment of President Trump. The Judiciary Committee has approved two articles of impeachment, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. Now, the debate. We'll hear from members on both sides. It is likely to be bitterly partisan.
So, Governor Pritzker has finally called for President Trump to step down from office. This is happening on the same day that Trump suggested using dangerous cities like Chicago as training grounds for the military. Now, even for these two politicians who are known for their back and forth, this day really stands out. You've got to see how they reacted. As for the troops, it seems likely that the Illinois National Guard will send in around 100 military personnel, since insiders say Pritzker has control over them. There's been quite a buzz lately about the Senate supposedly demanding Trump's resignation or removal, and people think there's a huge push in Congress to kick him out. But when you dig into it, you'll see that's just not true. The Senate hasn't called for him to resign or move for his removal. There's no actual process in motion to get Trump out of office. What's really happening is a few House Democrats are repeatedly trying to introduce articles of impeachment, but House Republicans keep shutting those down before they can even reach a vote. Since these attempts never make it past the House, they don't even get to the Senate. Therefore, the Senate hasn't done anything regarding impeachment, and they haven't taken any steps toward demanding Trump's resignation. It's one of those cases where people see headlines about impeachment discussions or Democratic initiatives and jump to conclusions, thinking something significant has happened, but it hasn't. Let's be real for a moment. Trusting mainstream media these days can be a bit tricky. That's why we created Pump Politics to share real stories, provide genuine context, and steer clear of corporate agendas. If you're interested in staying ahead of the headlines, our free newsletter will deliver the news straight to your inbox. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you want to support what we're doing, come be part of a community that truly values the truth. Now, let me break down how the process works, because understanding the ins and outs really clarifies why the Senate hasn't demanded anything about this situation. Impeachment is the impeachment saga begins in the House of Representatives. They need to kick things off by voting on articles of impeachment. Right now, the spotlight is on Washington, where the articles against President Trump are up for a full House vote this week. Things are heating up as the Judiciary Committee has approved two articles, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. It's bound to be a heated debate with members from both sides weighing in. And let's be real, it's likely to get pretty divisive. To move forward, they need a simple majority of 218 votes out of 435. If they manage to impeach, the case then heads to the Senate for a trial. The Senate acts like the jury in this scenario, and to actually convict him, they would need a two-thirds supermajority, 67 votes out of 100. If that happens, Trump would be out of office. But here's the kicker. It all starts in the House. The Senate can't do anything until the House votes to impeach, and so far that hasn't happened. The Republicans control the House with a slim margin of 218 to 214. They've been tabling every attempt the Democrats make to bring up impeachment. So we're still stuck at step one. No impeachment of Trump means the Senate has nothing to weigh in on. No trial, no demands for him to step down, absolutely nothing. Looking at what's coming from Senate leadership, there's no talk about Trump resigning or impeachment. Senate Majority Leader John Thune has even brushed off the Democrats' impeachment calls as political theater that's going nowhere, which is pretty much spot on because without the House passing those articles, the Senate has no part to play. There aren't any Senate resolutions asking for Trump's resignation or votes demanding he step down. The Senate is just carrying on with its usual business while the House Democrats keep trying and failing to impeach him. Trump, on the other hand, has mentioned impeachment, linking it to the upcoming midterms. He's hinted that if the Democrats flip the House in November 2026, they'll likely try to impeach him again. And honestly, he could be onto something there, as the Democrats have made their intentions pretty clear. So it looks like impeachment might be back on the table if the Democrats manage to win a majority in the House. But here's the kicker. Trump is pretty confident that if they do go ahead with impeachment, the Senate will just acquit him. That's because getting a conviction takes a whopping 67 votes. Right now, the Senate is split with 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats plus independents, which means the Democrats would need 20 Republicans on board to even think about convicting him, and that's just not going to happen. Trump has been through this before, having faced impeachment twice. The first time was back in 2019 for abuse of power and obstruction related to Ukraine, and the second was in 2021 for inciting the insurrection. Both times, the Senate found him not guilty. In that first impeachment, only one Republican senator voted to convict, and in the second, it was 7 Republicans, but that still left them way short of the necessary 67 votes. So Trump knows that even if the Democrats try again and impeach him for a third time, the Senate will likely acquit him once more. That's why he's brushing off the whole impeachment threat as just noise, and Senate leadership seems to think the same, considering how the math just doesn't add up. People often confuse proposals from House Democrats with actual Senate action, but the truth is the Senate hasn't called for Trump to resign or take any steps toward impeachment. Interestingly, prediction markets currently give Trump about a 14% chance of facing impeachment by the end of 2026. That's an increase from earlier this year, but it's still pretty low. The uptick in the odds seems to come from the belief that Democrats might flip the House in the upcoming midterms. And honestly, Trump's approval ratings are not looking great, with only 36% approving of how he's handling the war and 59% opposing the strikes in Iran. Plus, he's got a mountain of scandals piling up, giving Democrats a real shot at taking back the House. If they pull it off, they will likely go for impeachment again. But just like before, the Senate would acquit him, meaning he won't actually be removed from office. In summary, Democrats can definitely impeach Trump if they gain a House majority, but without 67 senators voting to convict, he's not going anywhere. So let's dive into what's really happening in Congress, what Senate leaders are saying, and if there's even a hint of a scenario where Trump might be forced to resign or removed. Let's break down what's been unfolding in Congress regarding impeachment and why we haven't seen any demands for Trump to step down yet. So first up, the House has been trying to push for impeachment against Trump for quite some time, really since back in 2025. I mean, it's been a recurring theme. Representative Shreenar kicked things off by introducing impeachment articles in May 2025 based on several allegations. Meanwhile, Representative Al Green has been busy too, putting forth resolutions that focus on Trump's conduct during the Iran war. Various Democratic members have been backing these moves, arguing that Trump's actions amount to impeachable offenses. The Democrats often mention issues like violations of the War Powers Act, obstruction of justice tied to the Epstein files, and abuse of power. They point out that Trump conducted military operations in Iran without getting the necessary approval from Congress, misrepresented a school bombing in Min, and is essentially waging an illegal war that has already claimed the lives of 8 American service members. To them, this all screams high crimes and misdemeanors ripe for impeachment. But here's where it gets tricky. Every time the Democrats try to bring these articles to a vote, the Republicans consistently hit a procedural button to stop them. This move is called tabling the motion. Essentially, when they table a motion in Congress, it just cuts off the debate and shifts focus away without ever letting it be voted on directly. So it's like a strategic move to squash proposals that they don't back, all without having to make a direct vote against them. And since the Republicans have control of the House with a hefty 218 to 214 majority, they've been applying this tactic left and right. So the routine goes like this. Democrats introduce articles for impeachment, Republicans table the motion, and it passes along party lines, effectively ending the impeachment efforts right then and there. This same pattern has repeated itself throughout 2025 and early 2026, with various attempts failing to get off the ground. Because of all this, the House hasn't actually impeached Trump yet. So the Senate is left sitting on the sidelines. The Constitution is clear that the House has the exclusive authority to impeach, while the Senate's job is just to conduct the trials afterward. Without the House taking that first step, the Senate can't really do anything or even push for his resignation. So, here's the deal with impeachment. It hasn't even made it to the Senate floor yet because the House hasn't taken action. The Senate's role is pretty much reactive. They're waiting to see what the House does before they act. Now let's dive into what the Senate leadership is saying about the whole situation. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, a Republican from South Dakota, seems pretty uninterested in the Democratic impeachment efforts. He's labeled it all as just noise and claims that the Senate is focused on real legislative work. And honestly, he's got a point. Without the House actually passing articles of impeachment, the Senate has nothing to work with. So Thune and his fellow Senate Republicans are just ignoring the talk and carrying on with their usual business. There's nothing coming from the Senate in terms of resolutions calling for Trump's resignation, nor are there any votes demanding he step down, or even hearings about removing him from office. The Senate is completely disengaged from the impeachment topic because, well, there isn't an impeachment to deal with right now. Could that change? Sure, if the Democrats flip the House in the midterm elections of November 2026 and gain a majority, they might pass articles of impeachment without needing any Republican support. That would then shift the case over to the Senate for a trial. However, even if that happens, it's likely that the Senate would still acquit Trump. Conviction requires a two-thirds supermajority, which means 67 votes. Right now, the Senate is split with 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats and independents. So even if every single Democrat and independent votes to convict, they would still need 20 Republicans to come over to their side to actually remove a sitting Republican president, which seems pretty far-fetched. It's like déjà vu. We've seen this play out before. Back in 2019, Trump was impeached for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress related to his pressure on Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden. The House impeached him mostly along party lines. When it went to the Senate, they acquitted him with a vote of 52 to 48 on the abuse of power charge. The only Republican willing to break ranks and vote to convict on obstruction was Mitt Romney, with the Senate voting 53 to 47 to acquit him. Then, in 2021, Trump got impeached again for incitement of insurrection after the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Once again, the House voted to impeach, and when it reached the Senate, he was acquitted again. This time, 7 Republicans decided to join the Democrats in voting to convict, including Romney and Susan Collins, but once again, the Senate did not convict him. So here's the deal with the Senate vote on Trump. You had Lisa Murkowski, Ben Sasse, Pat Toomey, Richard Burr, and Bill Cassidy in the mix. But when it came down to it, the final tally was 57 votes in favor of conviction and 43 against. That's 10 votes short of what they really needed, which was 67. So Trump lived to see another day, and this is a pretty clear pattern we're seeing. Even when he does something outrageous, like encouraging a mob to storm the Capitol, those Senate Republicans shy away from convicting him. It's like political suicide for them to vote against a president in their own party. Trump's supporters are fiercely loyal, and any Republican senator who dares to vote for conviction risks serious backlash. They might even get primaried by someone backed by Trump, which could cost them their seat. That's why Senate Republicans aren't stepping up to the plate. Trump knows this, which is why he's so confident that even if the Democrats manage to flip the House and impeach him a third time, the Senate won't convict him. He's completely aware that 67 votes is a tall order, and he understands that Senate Republicans won't cross him because they fear his base. He's been talking about impeachment with an eye on the midterms. There's this report from Al Jazeera where Trump expresses his belief that Democrats will try to impeach him if they take control of the House, but he's not stressed about it. In his mind, the Senate will let him off the hook like they did before, and honestly, he might be on the money there. Now let's dive into the prediction markets, which really give some insight into what people are thinking. By early March, Polymarket, a place where folks bet real money on political stuff, had the odds of Trump facing impeachment at 14% by the end of 2026. That's actually up from lower figures earlier this year. The rise in those odds comes from a belief that Democrats might actually flip the House in November. With Trump's approval rating sitting at only 36% and the Iran war being really unpopular, 69% of Americans aren't fans of those strikes. Things are looking rocky for Republicans. So, the Democrats do have a chance at taking the House, and if they pull that off, impeachment becomes a real possibility. But let's be clear, even with that 14% chance, it's still relatively low, which suggests that most people think Trump won't be impeached after all, and even if he were, actually removing him would be nearly impossible due to that pesky 67 vote requirement in the Senate. Here's the current political scene. Democrats want to impeach Trump, but Republicans are there to block them while they're in control of the House. It looks like Trump might be heading toward impeachment again, but the Senate is pretty much set to clear him. Even if they go ahead with the impeachment for a third time, it's unlikely he'll actually be ousted from his position. Resigning isn't really on his agenda either, because to do so would mean admitting he's made mistakes, and that's just not part of his game plan. Trump has built his whole political persona around pushing back, claiming he's being unfairly attacked, and refusing to back down. So if he does get impeached, you can expect him to stick it out, contest the Senate trial, get acquitted, and then turn around and say it was all part of a witch hunt. That's how he's done it before, and there's no sign he won't follow the same strategy again. Now, let's break down what's really going on, because there's a ton of confusion about Congress, the Senate's role, and what this means for Trump. First off, the Senate hasn't called for Trump's resignation or removal because they haven't received any articles of impeachment from the House yet. That's the crux of the matter. The Senate can't even take action on impeachment until the House votes to impeach. Right now, the House is controlled by Republicans with a slim majority of 218 to 214, and they're consistently sidelining any Democratic impeachment efforts. So no articles have been passed, and nothing has made its way to the Senate, which means they're not doing anything at all. No hearings, no votes, not even a hint of a resignation demand. The Senate's job in this whole impeachment process is only to react. The House has to act first, and since they haven't, the Senate simply hasn't responded. Secondly, House Republicans are regularly blocking Democratic proposals for impeachment, using their majority to prevent anything from moving forward. This has been the trend throughout 2025 and into 2026. For instance, Representative Sri Thanadar introduced impeachment articles back in May 2025, and Representative Al Green has brought up multiple resolutions concerning the Iran war, yet every time Republicans have swooped in to table these motions. When they do, the votes fall largely along party lines, and since Republicans hold the majority, the impeachment attempts stall out. So here we are, with Democrats persistently trying and Republicans consistently blocking, and nothing seems to be changing. The House hasn't impeached Trump, so the Senate is just sitting idle. It's pretty clear that as long as the Republicans are in charge of the House, things are just going to keep rolling along this way. Senate leadership, especially Majority Leader John Thune, has brushed off the Democrats' efforts as just noise and hasn't put any resolutions or votes on the table about Trump stepping down. When impeachment comes up, Senate Republicans just laugh it off as political theater. Thune has been pretty vocal about it, telling everyone that the Senate is focused on real legislative work, and without the House making a move on impeachment first, the Senate is basically sitting on the sidelines. So there aren't any resolutions in the Senate asking for Trump to resign, no votes to remove him, and definitely no hearings about impeachment on the agenda. They're just continuing their usual business. It's like Senate Republicans are ignoring the whole impeachment discussion because they literally have nothing to talk about. The House hasn't sent them anything to act on. Now, even if Democrats manage to take control of the House in the midterms and decide to impeach Trump, the math doesn't look good. Convicting him would need 67 votes in the Senate, and with a Republican majority of 53 to 47, that's just not going to happen. Trump isn't sweating it because, sure, the Democrats might gain the House this November, especially with his rock-bottom approval ratings and the unpopularity of the war out there. They could actually push through articles of impeachment without needing a single Republican vote. But once it lands in the Senate, it's a whole different ballgame. They would need 20 Republicans to jump on board to get that conviction, and let's face it, that's not really realistic. They've tried this before. In 2019, only one Republican had the guts to vote for conviction, and in 2021, 7 Republicans gave it a shot. Still, that was 10 votes shy of what was necessary, so even if Trump faced impeachment a third time, the Senate would likely just let him be. Looking ahead, Trump is pretty sure that if Republicans lose the House, Democrats will make another attempt at impeachment after the midterms. But he's feeling confident that the Senate will acquit him just like they did in those previous years. He's been pretty open about this too, mentioning how he's not worried because he believes the Senate will come through for him. And honestly, he might just be right. After all, he's seen it all before. So, here's the scoop. Trump is pretty much seeing this potential third impeachment as just another round of political theatrics. He understands the game well enough to know that Senate Republicans aren't going to vote to convict him. That would be political suicide for them. Plus, reaching 67 votes is a mountain too high to climb. With that in mind, he's got this swagger about surviving these attempts, just like he did with the last two. Now, amid all this, let's dive into the bigger political picture. Trump has got some serious challenges on his plate right now. His approval rating is sitting at a staggering 36%, which is pretty rough for any sitting president. The conflict in Iran is a major thorn in his side, with 59% of Americans opposed to military action. It's not just that. 8 service members have lost their lives, and he's entangled in a scandal about a school bombing where he wasn't truthful about the blame. On top of that, the Supreme Court knocked down his tariff program, and there's some heat on Attorney General Pam Bondi regarding her handling of various investigations. So yeah, Trump is politically vulnerable like he hasn't been in a while, and the Democrats are keen to take advantage. They're pushing impeachment votes even though they know they're going to flop in the Republican-dominated House. Their game plan seems to be keeping Trump's scandals front and center, forcing Republicans to defend him and creating some juicy campaign material for the midterm elections. Every time the Democrats bring up articles of impeachment, Republicans end up voting to set them aside. Those votes? Perfect fodder for campaign ads saying things like, "Your Republican representative voted to shield Trump from accountability for an illegal war," or whatever specific issue is on the table. That could backfire on Republicans, especially in swing districts. So even if impeachment isn't getting anywhere, it's still serving a political purpose for the Democrats. However, this whole spectacle can be a bit confusing for folks. People see the headlines about impeachment discussions and Democratic proposals and think something substantial is happening. They might assume the Senate is calling for Trump to resign or that impeachment is actually in motion, but that's far from the truth. It's all just political theater with no real progress because the Republicans are controlling the House and won't allow it to move forward. To wrap it up, the bottom line is clear. The Senate has not called for Trump's resignation or removal, and there are no resolutions, votes, or actions about impeachment happening up there. It's pretty clear that no articles from the House have made their way to the Senate, and with House Republicans regularly putting a halt to Democratic impeachment plans, those efforts just aren't going anywhere. Senate leaders seem to brush all of this off as just background noise. Even if the Democrats manage to flip the House and go through with impeaching Trump after the midterms, getting 67 votes in the Senate for a conviction is an uphill battle. It's simply not going to happen. Trump has already been acquitted twice, and he seems pretty certain the Senate would do it again if needed. The buzz about the Senate demanding Trump step down seems to stem from some confusion over blocked House initiatives and some exaggerated claims seen in videos. Sure, Trump is under pressure with low approval ratings and an unpopular war, but when it comes down to it, he's pretty safe from being removed thanks to Republican control in the Senate, who are unlikely to convict him. So at this point, it feels like impeachment might just be a big waste of energy, doesn't it? Even if Democrats know it won't pan out, it's worth considering if they should keep trying. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, so feel free to drop a comment. And don't forget to subscribe, because this story is going to keep evolving as we head toward the midterms. If you want to keep up with all the political twists and turns, our newsletter covers daily stories like this with real context. Just check out the links in the description. That's all I've got for today. Catch you next time.